Joe, movie critic for NovaStream Network.
And I'm Georja Malt, founder of With G Digital and lover of literature.
And welcome to The Book Was Better, a podcast with Georgia and myself in which we read a book, watch the movie that the book was adapted into, and discuss the age-old debate, what was better, the book or the film. As always, thank you all for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, hello. And if you're listening on the podcast platforms that over the past episodes, I'm just running out of room on the list of podcasting platforms to name in this little segment here. We thank you for listening there. But anything that ends in podcast, we're probably there. And yeah, thank you all for listening. It's the show's growing week by week, and we're glad you're all enjoying it. Obviously, last month's episode was a little bit of a smash hit with its cultural relevancy in red, white, and royal blue.
Nice little sugar hit.
It was a little sugar hit after
something a bit sweet for all of you.
Gasoline ketamine hit of Fight Club. We need a little bit of sweet, sugary goodness. And
such a good description.
This month, I don't know if it's sugar. Let's just say there's sugar sprinkled on.
Sugar and spice.
There is sugar and spice this month. We're getting the best of both bloody worlds. But also with that last episode, thank you for those who commented on the YouTube video as well. We did have someone actually comment. We was talking about the secret chapter that was released for Red, White, and Royal Blue. And it was all from, I forgot their names already, the two main characters, but it was from the other guy's perspective about what had happened like 3 years later.
Oh, Henry's
perspective. So I thought it was pretty interesting. So thank you all for letting us know the info. So
cool.
If you have any,
I'll have to read that.
If you have any fun facts or statistics about the films that we don't bring up or the books, let us know. Let us know in the comments. But yes, Georgia, as alluded, sugar and spice on this month's episode, and it was my pick this month, and I went with the golden oldie, the SHAWSHANK Redemption, which is right off the bat for me. This is probably a very biased episode because I genuinely consider this a 5-star movie.
Yeah, me too.
It's pretty bloody great.
It's like it's kind of one of those things where everyone says it's one of the best movies ever made, and you just can't really argue with it.
Are you going to fight that? Probably bloody not, because it is so damn good. But obviously I'd never read the novella it's based on from one Stephen King, like one of the most esteemed authors of all time.
I mean, What have we got? We've got It, Carrie, Pet Sematary,
The Shining.
The Shining. It goes on and on and on. Like the man has told so many famous stories.
How many stories? It's countless. How many of them did he write during his Coke years? Probably the most of them, to be totally honest.
Yeah.
But that's when he wrote his most unhinged shit, and I think that's really fun. So, but this one's interesting. So it's like 1980s that this came out, late 1980s, I believe. And it's like, for me, it's a novella, right? So it's actually like not a complete. Well, okay, sorry. I should ask the literary expert. What is a novella?
It's just a short novel.
It's a short novel, and you know what? That's a novel for old Nicky boy.
Yeah, so he published it. So he published his first book in the late 60s, and then
he's still publishing now. It's like 60 years of writing.
Yeah, it's amazing. My God. He's actually sold 400 million books in his career. So to put that in perspective, Harry Potter's about the 600 million mark, and that's a worldwide phenomenon. So
that's like
he's not far behind for something that
because Stephen King is not like
it's niche, a bit niche,
right? Totally, it's not for everyone because he writes some pretty cooked content.
I'm not a Stephen King reader.
Yeah, right.
Because I'm not a horror girl.
Totally. So, but coming into something like this,
I know he writes more.
No, totally. But
yeah,
he is the horror guy,
he's
right?
The horror king.
Interesting.
I read Dark Tower, so he even branched into the fantasy world as well.
That's
with Dark
true.
Tower, but so he sort of
probably not one that's going to pop up on the podcast, by the way, because that movie and that great.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we'll put that one on.
I think we can just go ahead and say the book was better.
Okay, sure. That's a quick episode. That's a wrap.
Thanks for watching, guys.
But he sort of ramped up in the 70s, and then, like you were saying, this one came out in the 80s. So, and it was part of a collection of short stories called Different Seasons, I believe it was called. So that had a series of novellas, and then obviously due to the popularity and success of it got published as its own short novel, like which we're seeing here today. If you're watching us on YouTube, we've got it on the desk as always, presented. And also on theme, I've actually wearing my best prison overalls.
I was going to say there is a bit of a prison look going, and I just look like a criminal on the best of days. So we're really.
I was like, we should have done black and white striped outfits and
great. We done little
and balls.
We could have done Andy before and after. I could have like caked myself in shit or something, and we could have done before and after the escape. Spoiler alert. But I thank you for jumping in on the theme. Actually, now whatever next month's book's going to be, which I don't know what it is. Stay tuned to find out. Maybe there'll be theming for that.
No,
not so much. November.
November, we're going to theme it,
There's definitely
guys.
some bloody theming happening. So, okay, so it's interesting. So, short story initially, then widely popular, and then obviously worth noting that the novella is called Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption, which is obviously due to the fact that a main plot point in the film is the posters that Andy, our main character, has up in his cell, one of them being Rita Hayworth.
Yeah, she's the initial one. I actually find it quite interesting that the novella is titled that because the poster changes in both the book and the film.
And the film and the I guess the poster that, you know, the climax of the film really occurs around is, not the Rita Hayworth poster.
Yeah, so I kind of don't blame them for ditching it from the movie title.
No, totally. And I guess as well with a movie as well, you're kind of thinking like long titles, not great. And isn't Rita Hayworth not alive anymore? Why would she be in this movie? Cool. So I kind of get that.
Confusing for the moviegoers who don't read. Is that you think
that general audience? And you know what? That's how smart I think I am. So I speak for the general man.
So how did this become a movie? Because it was just a little novella in a book.
Just a little novella that could. So Frank Darabont, who is quite an esteemed writer and director. Okay. So
I don't know him, I don't think.
Most popular, like in pop culture, he was the one who adapted The Walking Dead into the television show.
I've definitely heard of that.
So he's did that, but he's also a bit of a King aficionado. So The Shawshank Redemption was his first venture into King's work, but he's also done The Green Mile.
Oh, yes.
And he did The Mist in 2007, which, have you seen The Mist?
No.
Jesus Christ. That is one of the...
Is it scary?
It's a bit... you know what? It's one of those movies where...
It doesn't take much to make me scared, mate.
It's one of those movies where humanity is scary. But there's also really scary shit happening.
That's just going outside, isn't it?
And these days, we are living a horror movie. But it has literally one of the most depressing endings to a movie I've ever seen ever. So I don't think we won't touch that one for a little while. We'll wait till you become a bit more, hang out with me a bit more, become a bit more jaded, and then we'll do The Mist, mate. Don't you worry. But he's a King aficionado. But he obviously is sole screenwriter and director on this film, and he purchased the rights in 1987 to the novella. So it took a little while to actually develop into the film because the film was released in 1994. But the real interesting things here is that initially, for the character of Andy, who played Andy, which I think we'll get into a discussion about, like whether he is actually the main character of the book and the film.
Sorry, I just can't stop laughing because I always think that every movie has Matt Damon in it.
I
thought this guy was Matt Damon. Before I'd even seen Deception, I got into a huge argument at dinner with someone that it was Matt Damon, not Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh, in Inception, yeah.
In Inception, sorry, in Deception. I hadn't even seen the film, and I was like, it's Matt Damon. It's absolutely not Matt Damon.
It's not. But
when I watched this now and saw that it wasn't Matt Damon, boy, was I surprised because I thought it was Matt Damon.
This classic film that's coming on to its 30th year of existence, arguably one of the most famous films in existence. I'm very shocked and surprised you thought Matt Damon.
Who's this guy?
That no one created. Yeah, when the fuck's Matt Damon coming into this
I was like,
movie?
I thought who's this actor?
Are you getting to the prison break scene? You're like, where is Matt Damon?
No, I thought he was the main character.
Guy.
So as soon as I saw him, I was like, Matt Damon looks weird in this. And then my partner Kyle was like, this isn't Matt Damon.
It's Tim Robbins, in fact.
Who is that?
Fantastic. So Tim Robbins this was sort of one of his breakout roles in the 90s.
And then obviously he did so well because I don't know the guy from a bar.
He's still working heaps
what is
today.
He in?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked.
Sorry,
I'm glad I prepared
derailing
it. No. This is what we're here for. So Mystic River, I have to bring up.
I've never seen that.
Could be on the show. Clint Eastwood film based from I believe it's a Dennis Lehane novel, which is fantastic. So his most recent thing he's done is Silo, this big Apple TV Plus show. Okay, no, all good.
Guys,
what else?
I'm looking at this list. I've not seen this. I've seen Portlandia, but I'm guessing he's only in 2 episodes.
2 episodes as the Excellency. He was in Green Lantern.
Oh, how could I forget?
Let's not forget that.
Such a standout movie.
Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny. War of the Worlds. He's the crazy guy.
I've never seen War of the Worlds.
Oh my God, Georgia, we have a lot of work to do.
This might be a waste of the listeners.
Anchorman, public TV news anchor in the big fight scene. He's like public. So there we go.
Okay, standout role.
Most famous role. But he's like he's a respected working actor. So
okay, sure. So is Matt Damon.
You know what? Arguably even more so. Let's not forget that Tim Robbins is also an Oscar winner. Now, I don't believe it was.
Is Matt Damon?
No. Well, technically, Matt Damon is an Oscar winner for screenwriting because him and Ben Affleck wrote Good Will Hunting won the screenplay for that. But Tim Robbins won the Academy Award Best Actor for Mystic River, so I think we're definitely doing Mystic River on this show. Just going to put that out there one day. So Tim Robbins is Andy Dufresne after that little...
Guys, it's not Matt Damon.
It's not Matt
just
Damon.
In case you went through the same thing as me.
So if you are going to flick the movie on after this episode, just know.
Just be aware that
it's not the Dames. But do you know who was attached to this role initially before Tim Robbins was in the lead?
Leonardo DiCaprio.
It wasn't Leo. I think he was a child back then. I think he was literally an infant.
Matt Damon must have been an infant then.
Matt Damon would have been
in the
embryo.
90s.
No.
Leonardo DiCaprio
He would have been
90s.
early teens in the 90s, Leo, because wasn't he like only just 20 when they made Titanic or something?
Yeah, that's true. Okay. No, who was it?
Three pretty decent big names.
Wow, okay.
Kevin Costner was attached. Tom Hanks was attached. Tom Cruise was attached.
No, that's who I was thinking, not Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise, but young 90s Tom Cruise, when he's doing, he's coming off like his 80s run of like Risky Business, Born on the 4th of July.
I'm thinking of him in these really like arrogant roles.
Like these Mission Impossible. There's a big Mission Impossible poster behind the camera right now.
He's looking at me like, what do you got to say about me, Georgia? You think I shouldn't have been in Shawshank?
What do you like? What do you like more about Matt Damon than you like about me? So they were all linked to the role of Andy, which I thought was pretty interesting. But I do think Tim Robbins is perfect in this role, and especially after reading the book as well, and how Red describes Andy. Red, who is played by Morgan Freeman.
Big change from the book.
Big change from the book.
He's a red-headed Irishman in the book.
Red, white Irish guy, which I do love that they bring up in the film as well.
It's funny how they do it. So obviously the way they explain his nickname Red is that his surname is Redding.
In the book, but in the film it's great. He's like, why do they call you Red? He's like, must be because I'm Irish.
Yeah.
And it's great. It's such a good little throwaway. But then also just while we're on casting, Tommy in the book, who comes in as I think one of the greatest characters in the film, was Brad Pitt was attached.
Really?
But he dropped out because he got real famous after Thelma and Louise and started pursuing bigger roles. But could you imagine?
I bet he'd be kicking himself.
I think he would be too.
Because even though it's a small role, it's an iconic role in one of the most iconic movies of all time.
Imagine being in, which is the next little fact, the number one rated movie on IMDb of all time. The number one, right? Like, so it's
more than Godfather. And there's a lot of guys just sitting there voting that up.
That's it. Like, if you don't vote The Godfather, you're not a film bro. So Godfather's number 3, I believe, and Godfather 2 is number 2.
Oh, okay.
And then number 1, Holden, Shawshank Redemption. I think it's like a 9.3 last time I checked. But
wow,
it's incredible. Imagine, you missed out on like one of the most iconic bit roles
of like film history.
Literally.
Because I'm sure there's larger, or I'm doing air quotes, larger roles he's taken where the films have fallen into obscurity.
I will also say though, Brad Pitt did have a really good run in the 90s. So I don't think he made any bad decisions.
No.
But the role of Tommy, for the amount of time he would have had to film, probably wouldn't have like hindered him. You know what I mean? Like he still could have done all these really cool things because the character of Tommy is really cool. My favorite thing about this film is that it's shot by Roger Deakins. Now, Roger Deakins is arguably one of the greatest living cinematographers. And Shawshank is a beautiful looking movie. Straight away for me, like the iconic shot is every time that Red goes to the parole board, and it's a dark hallway, but it's the jail gates opening, the door opening, and like the light comes in. And they use that shot a fair bit in the film. But Roger Deakins is an incredible cinematographer and criminally underrated, and only won his first Oscar in 2017 for Blade Runner 2049.
Oh, okay.
But he has shot some of the best looking films of all time.
Oh, wow. I know it's such an interesting job in cinematography.
Oh, it's like you literally make or break how a movie can look. Like a director can tell you how they want it to look, but it's a cinematographer who like brings it to life. And that's just a cool job. But as much as we love this movie, it was considered a box office disaster.
I actually was looking in terms of how much it made in the box office first budget, and I thought it didn't seem that big.
It didn't. So worldwide, it made $75 million on about a $23 million budget, which is fine.
It's all right.
It's fine, but only $16 million in the US. So it didn't even make its budget back in the US alone.
Oh.
It was pretty much considered like a box office flop. Now, it's not because there wasn't critical acclaim, because apparently the test screenings went really well. People who watched the movie loved it, and critically it did really well. But it also opened up against Pulp Fiction and Forrest Gump.
I was going to say it must have been competition or
It was
marketing.
huge competition. So Pulp Fiction had just won an award at the Venice Film Festival, so there was big buzz about that. Forrest Gump is Tom Hanks in like arguably one of the biggest movies of all time. It's not an ideal time.
Imagine going to the cinema and be like, what do we see? Pulp Fiction, Forrest Gump, or The Shawshank Redemption. Literally, so hard to pick.
The most recent example of that, which is funny, is like the Barbie or Oppenheimer thing, right? But think before that.
Yeah.
Like, it would be like, what great movie or piece of shit are we going to see today?
Literally.
But like, you would have the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
Which, me, controversially, I don't think Forrest Gump's that good of a movie. But you have two great choices there.
I love Forrest Gump.
Everyone does, and I get it. And you know what? Is it a book? It might come up one day.
I think it is a book.
We might have to bring it up one day because I just feel like I got stuff to get off my chest about Forrest Gump. But that's neither here nor there because we're here to talk about Shawshank Redemption.
Believe it or not,
after the conversational tangents of this episode, we're still here. But thanks for staying. We're here for the Shawshank Redemption. After its like box office failures, it was one of the first big pushes from Warner Brothers for VHS rentals, and they made 320,000 VHS copies, which was unheard of at the time because it hadn't like picked up heaps. Yeah, like VHS wasn't a staple. Home video wasn't a staple thing. And it became
crazy. It wasn't that long ago.
30 years ago, we were like, VHSs weren't a thing. And now we're like, I watch movies on my Apple Watch. Like, that's, you know what I mean? Like, that's
we're almost putting contact lenses in to watch digital movies. Like, that's the point we're
about to live in movies. Like, we're years away from that. But it became one of like the most highest top rentals of 1995. So it kind of came back and the word of mouth of the film got out and people watched it at home, and obviously it led to a fair few Oscar nominations as well. But critically on Rotten Tomatoes, it's at 91% and the audience score is 98%. But the biggest praise is that Stephen King has come out and said that this is his favorite of film adaptation of his work.
Oh, wow.
Which I think is pretty bloody special, to be totally honest.
That's nice.
But I think we're both talking about this film with quite an affinity. Do you remember the first time you saw the movie?
It would have to be, I probably haven't watched it for a good several years,
right,
to be honest.
Yeah.
Not that I loved it. When I saw it, I was like, that's amazing. And I was going through this, I'm pretty sure the reason I watched it was actually because I was obsessed with The Count of Monte Cristo.
And but
I didn't, I'd watched The Count of Monte Cristo first.
Prison Break movie,
and
right?
Someone I was talking to had said, oh, well, like the Shawshank Redemption's like the modern version. And I was like, I've never seen that. And they were like, I'm sorry,
How old were you?
Oh, probably early 20s.
Okay, right. Oh, yeah, okay.
But, as you know, my parents aren't exactly the biggest film people. So I just didn't have that, I guess, influence. So I just was slowly, once I moved out, chipping away at these like iconic movies. And watched Shawshank and I was like, wow, that was actually a really good film.
Phenomenal. I have seen it countless times. I genuinely love this movie, but rewatched it recently, probably within the last year or so, because Rhiannon had never seen it.
Oh, I'm surprised we didn't watch it together.
I'm shocked too.
I don't know where I watched it then.
I mean, you guys, I've heard the rumor that you guys did Gone with the Wind back to back once, 8 hours straight.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I've watched that like 4 times in one day, but that's cancelled it.
Yeah, well, sorry, we can't talk about it.
I don't like it.
If
anyone asks me, I don't like it.
I apologize for watching it, but cancelled. So yeah, the shock that the 2 hour and 20-minute movie didn't make the cut when Gone with the Wind and 4 times
but
in a day.
I mean, Shawshank's not a romance.
You know, that's true. You're not sitting there. That's not a movie you bond over. Whereas like with Rhiannon, I'm like, you need to watch this because it's good.
Yeah.
I'm not here to be like, let's watch something easy. I'm like, you will like this.
Yeah. And it is really good, but it's not always an easy watch. Like you're not going to just put it on all the time.
Do you know what's funny though? The more I watch it, and this is probably like one of those things where it's like, okay, yeah, of course you know what's coming, but like the more I watch it, the happier I get watching it. Like the more the less I find it confronting.
You're just what's the word? You're just becoming desensitized to the harsher,
masochistic, maybe. Like who knows? Like I just like really downtrodden
even
dramas.
When you said that this was sugar, I was like, that's an interesting way to describe it because there's a lot of suffering.
There's a lot of look. Hey, we watch
like a lot of suffering.
We watch
30 years of suffering.
I was gonna say we watch a man who has been in prison for 40 years almost recount his story of a friendship with a man who was innocently put in jail for 19 years in the movie. And I still managed to find the sugar in it though.
I mean, like it's end is you feel good. Like, it's a feel good ending.
It's a feel good ending, but I also would argue that I get a lot of satisfaction out of the friendship between Red and Andy. I think their integrity and their adversity in the face of an absolute shitty situation is actually kind of uplifting.
I find that the friendship is stronger in the film.
Oh, so much so.
Because there's just moments that it didn't happen in the book, which in the book you can still read. Because obviously what I liked about the book is it's all Red's narration. So obviously in the film, I love Morgan Freeman's narration.
How can you not?
And the book is just all of
him,
that, because
and when you're reading it in like his voice as well,
100%.
Absolutely was.
You know, it's funny because when I was watching it with my partner who had, you know, done a film course or whatever, he said that one of the things they taught them was to not implement that narrative style movie because I think it can be so overdone and so corny in some things.
But when it's done well.
Exactly. And this is a case of it being done.
Oh God, yeah. Because it's not overused. That narration's not overused. And it, to me, is more so used to propel time in the story,
100%.
which I think is a big thing to do when your movie is actually set over almost 20 years.
Yeah, you need something to move along.
And like they do well with like, you know, obviously Andy's hair gets grayer, Red's hair gets grayer. They get skinnier.
But like subtly, not like in Harry Potter where they're all standing at the end of the train and Ron's just got a beer gut and like weird grey streaks. Like this.
Ron. He got absolutely shafted at the end of Deathly Hallows Part 2. Bless his soul. They just needed a bit more narration, a bit more Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, maybe they needed some Morgan Freeman. But
the voice of God narrating this movie.
It's so good. But yeah, in the movie, there's sort of several things that happen with their friendship that don't happen in the book. Like, you know, obviously with Andy giving him the harmonica as a present doesn't happen in the book.
So lovely.
It is lovely, but also I had a question to ask about this.
Please.
Was there ever any indication that Red had a particular affinity for music? Because it just seemed like a random present to me.
I thought about this on this watch as well. No, but there's a conversation earlier in the film when they're around they're in the mess hall having breakfast and they're talking about music.
Okay.
And Red's kind of like, oh, it's after Andy's been in solitary, I believe. And he's like, oh, you know, I just go in there with Mozart. And Red's like, what are you doing? What do you mean? Like, there's nothing. He's like, no, he's up in here and he's in here. And I think it was him explaining to Red that like music isn't just something you listen to, it's something you feel. Which is why I think the significance as well of Andy playing the record later
I liked
on.
That scene.
Whether that's intentionally connected to the harmonica bit, I don't know. But I think it was Andy's way of being like, create this music and potentially.
Music definitely was more of was a theme. I would say I would go so far to call it a bit of a theme.
Totally, yeah.
In the movie.
With that Thomas Newman score as well. Like, holy beautiful. Shit. Oh my God.
In the book, it wasn't really.
It's not really a theme. And I'm trying to remember whether the music it happens in the book. It doesn't. No, it doesn't. Hey, so yeah, it's quite more prevalent in the film, which is nice because it kind of gives Andy a bit more, even more sophistication. To be honest,
and it's also a medium where it can be portrayed easier. Like it's a bit harder to portray like music in a book because unless it's like a press the button card.
I was saying. I do remember saying to Rhiannon, this is another one of my random fucking movie facts, but. That scene where Andy plays the record over the loudspeakers in the warden's office is parodied in Family Guy.
Oh, stop. I don't know if I've ever seen that.
And it's Cleveland it's a Shawshank episode and Peter puts a record on and it's Hollaback Girl by Gwen Stefani. And it's Cleveland Girl's like, I don't know to this day what a Hollaback Girl is, but I just know I like that music.
Oh my God, I don't know if I've ever seen that episode.
I was this beautiful moment in the movie and I just paused and I was like, hey, Rihanna, do you want to hear something fun? But I think you're totally right. Like music is so much like motif's the wrong word, but it's absolutely used more so as a device in this film compared to anything in the book.
And then the other scene that shows their friendship is the fact that this is skipping forward a bit, the night that Andy escapes.
Yes.
That's the night they're all worried that he's going to kill himself.
Which is very different in the book as well. Yeah,
they're not really worried. Well, yeah, like he doesn't escape as quickly in the book after the incident. And then he just like also like Red being like, that's the longest night of my life. Like, I'm so worried about Andy. Like the way in the film, it just really shows that care for his friend, whereas the book like doesn't have any of that sort of like sentimental like concern.
I think that, sentimental's exactly the right word, because I think that's why the ending of the movie hits so hard, is because I think they're written fantastically, but the chemistry between Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman is unbelievably
just
good.
Feel the respect,
right
the
from the
connection,
get-go too.
And I think male friendships aren't ever written about in a super serious or powerful way enough. Yeah. Sometimes, like from
it's the perfect
I just feel
setting for it. Yeah. Hey, like it's almost like it's a forced friendship where everyone knows the stakes, but it develops into something more, and
they're both like got their barriers up at the start, but just their mutual like respect and how well they get along. Like you sort of see those walls come down over all these decades time. In this.
Because Andy in the book and the film is very much portrayed as someone who is quite stoic, quite to himself. Yeah. And he doesn't, he comes across as intelligent. In the book, Red describes the first time him seeing Andy come into the prison that he didn't walk slouched like everyone else. There was still an element of pride, but it wasn't cockiness. It wasn't like a guy trying to establish himself as like King Dick of the jail. It was just a man who, as a person.
What did he say? It's like him walking around like he was at a cocktail party or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's how he describes him walking around the exercise yard. It's like everyone else here is depressed. Yeah. And then he's just like shoulders up, always talk about this grin that he has on his face, which I think Tim Robbins nails in the film. Like just that small smirk he gives in those moments where it pops up is just so, that's to me where like part of that sugar comes in, because I think being such a downtrodden story set in such an awful environment like Shawshank Prison, these moments of levity are probably exacerbated a little bit. And being able to see that and actually see that human connection between people probably is why I enjoy this movie so much. Like, I don't love everything that happens in it. Like, obviously there's massive elements in the book and the film in which we have a group called the Sisters who are frequently beating up and raping people and it's awful. However, it is one of my favorite scenes in the movie where he decides to try and fight back and talks about biting a guy's dick off. And I was like, that's Andy through and through. It's that stoicism of like, I'm just not going to not go down swinging. Like, and it's kind of throughout the whole film, that's, he's true to his character literally until he escapes Shawshank.
Was there anything about, like the book that you liked more than the movie particularly?
Do you know what? It's interesting because I have my notes here and I can't think of something that I liked more in the book. I don't think I had a favorite moment in the book, and I love the movie so much that when I was reading the book, I was feeling that same joy rereading scenes or getting a bit more context for certain things.
Because some lines are directly taken.
Completely, right? And then you see how they're delivered in the film. You're like, oh my God, that's incredible.
Yeah.
The one thing, and it's probably a major change, but I appreciated the context of it, was finding out why Red's in prison. Yeah. Which is how the book opens. So in the movie,
I found it a bit interesting.
I found it interesting too. Even more depressing, to be honest. But in the movie, he just says murder. He's just in there for murder.
And he says he's like the only guilty guy in
the only guilty guy.
Because he owns up to it.
Which is a great...
I think he regrets it instantly.
You can tell that in the book too. Like even though the opening page or a couple of pages is Red describing why he's in Shawshank, and ultimately what he did was jealous of his wife. Something happened with his wife. I can't remember.
No, he actually, and this is the thing. He says he felt instantly guilty, but it was kind of premeditated. It was premeditated. He played with the brakes of her car so that she would have a car accident and he could get her life insurance. That's
right.
But then she gave a lift to a neighbor and her young child. And they all died.
All crashed into the town fountain or statue or something.
Red was actually charged with all 3 murders.
So he's serving 3 life sentences in Shawshank. So it's this kind of really dour but tone setting beginning to the book.
I think they didn't do it in the film because they wanted him to be more likable to the general public.
I agree. And I think as well they really wanted to get to the point in the movie. Like the opening of the film is punchy.
Yeah.
Like it is courtroom flashbacks, just real A Few Good Men sort of vibe about it. So where you really get to see that sort of Andy's intelligence, I guess. So,
do you know who else you hear the backstory of? Brooks. I'm like, do you know who else? You've read it, but
yeah. So,
I've got to
surprise.
work on my segues.
So, no. I'm glad you bring this up because
that was horrible.
Brooks's backstory in the film. In the
he's so
book,
sweet in the film. He's a sweet old man.
But we see an element of that when he gets paroled, and
true.
he tries to stay in prison by threatening to stab someone with a
I actually
in the neck.
totally forgot. That's such a good point. You see, he has that violent streak. So in the book, it actually tells us that he lost a poker match and came home and murdered his wife and daughter.
Yeah,
that's pretty
brutal. Yeah, and I feel like there is probably an assumption that alcohol's involved as well, which obviously doesn't discredit what he did because it was still a shitty thing to do. But you're right. He's so sweet in the film. And again, probably one of those things where they're like, let's just not do this in the movie because
it's hard to root for a guy who killed his wife and daughter.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Which is funny because until Tommy comes into the film, it's quite ambiguous as to whether Andy killed his wife and the lover. It's definitely skewing towards he didn't, but there's still a weird ambiguity about did he actually do it? Which it's funny you say that because I might jump ahead quickly because it brings me to my favorite part of the movie.
Is it Tommy?
It's not. Tommy's close, but you will. I already know you're going to disagree with me on this one.
Oh God, what? You sociopath? What did you like?
Mr. Brooks's last few minutes
fucking hell.
is the best scene in the movie.
It's so depressing, Nick. Why would that be your favorite?
Because it's the one that makes me emotional the most. Because
I'm really glad something finally penetrated that hard shell of yours.
This iron heart that I have.
That's hope for the future.
The saddest, the only thing that's made me feel this year is watching an old man hang himself.
Yeah, I was like.
But to me, I think they capture something quite perfectly, and it's the idea that jail is not always ideal rehabilitation for people, right?
Oh, I don't think anyone
I don't think anyone thinks so.
There's a lot of problems with jail as rehabilitation.
It's so solidified when this old man in his probably mid 70s, maybe early 80s, just this old meek man who is in prison for murder, but has completely changed who he is. Has purpose as the librarian in SHAWSHANK.
He's like a respected man, a known
respected man. He has his bird. Everyone knows the bird, Jake. And he gets paroled finally. And he's scared and he doesn't want to go because he doesn't know what life is like. So much has changed in the 60-odd years he's been at SHAWSHANK that he tries to kill another man to do it. But he gets out and it's that first shot of him on the bus. And he's got his hands perched on the seat.
He's
so old and sweet. But for me, it's when I start going oh God.
Is it when he's bagging at the grocer?
When he's bagging at the grocer and he can't keep up.
That killed me. I just think of my nan trying to bag at the grocer.
That's right, totally. But to me, this is so beautifully shot, and it's kind of a nice halfway point in the film. I feel like if all the film was set in SHAWSHANK, there could be a little bit of tiresome nature about it.
To me, what that scene meant to me, it's funny, you look at it as the rehabilitation process of prison. And I sort of saw it as this idea of what is freedom. Because he felt freer in SHAWSHANK than he did in the outside world. And it's funny because in the book, you actually don't see this journey that Brooks goes on.
No, he goes.
He just goes. Leaves, and what happens is his bird is found dead.
Yes.
And what they say is it's because he let the bird go and then the bird didn't know how to live free as a free bird. And that's kind of, but they don't do that.
Even more heartbreaking.
They don't do that in the film with the bird because they actually do it with Brooks himself.
They do it with
this
Brooks.
idea of once you've been in this place for all the time, they don't know how to be.
You don't know how to function in the real world, which is so goddamn upsetting. When he's scared of cars and whatnot. There wouldn't
have been as many cars.
Even Red says that in when he finally gets paroled at the end, and he's like, there used to be one or two cars on the street. Now they're everywhere.
That would be so weird.
It's so weird to think that. And then it's just heartbreaking when Brooks is packing his bag and you're like, oh, maybe he's getting out of the halfway house. And he puts Brooks was here, carves it in.
I don't like it very much. It's not for me.
Not for you. And then, he hangs himself.
He writes a little letter. It's just so sad.
It's heartbreaking. But for me, that is also part of the heart of the film is why I think the relationships in the film are so well done because this man, Mr. Brooks, who we generally only see for probably 3 or 4 scenes, but is an integral person to Andy, and we see what he has to go through, is perfect filmmaking for a scene that was added into the film. That's not in the book. So
yeah, that was an improvement.
It's my favorite part, but not because I loved watching it, because I think it is like the antithesis. It's
so powerful.
It's
like
powerful,
I understand why you're saying in terms of like what's the most powerful moment of the movie. Like it's probably the most
Brooksy.
powerful.
What? So we've skipped over what you want. What your favorite?
What I want is for no one to be a criminal and everyone to be a lovely person and everyone to be happy.
SHAWSHANK. Book and movie. What sticks out to you? What are the things you enjoy?
Okay. So do you know what? This is very against my nature since we're just flipping. I will have to say, obviously in the book, so Johnny, after he has information that could see Andy get out of prison, in the book, the warden actually offers him the opportunity to go to a better prison with a better rehabilitation
minimum
program.
Security,
can see his wife
on weekends.
See his daughter.
I think he can leave the prison on weekends, sort of thing.
See his daughter, and he takes that deal and runs.
Yeah.
I mean, great for him.
Great for him.
Not so great for Andy.
Totally.
But in the movie,
oh man,
the warden assassinates him because he wants to keep Andy
because he'll
under
testify
his thumb.
against Andy. Yeah.
And although obviously,
Andy,
as someone who always wants a happy ending, I was happy for him in the book. But do I believe that what they did in the movie was 100 times more powerful?
Oh God, yeah.
Much more effective in terms of telling a story, making you care about characters, making you hate the villain. Which in the book there was also 3 wardens, but here we've kind of got one, and he's
a mixture of
worst.
All 3.
He's the worst.
Okay, look at this note right here.
Does it say he's the worst?
Warden,
that's accurate.
He's a top 10 villain of all time.
I wouldn't disagree because I hate people who hide behind religion to be a good person, but they're actually just a.
He's
See
an
you
asshole.
next Tuesday.
He's an ass. He's a pure fuckwit asshole. Like he genuinely is. And the actor who plays him, which I will get up.
I'm
quick.
like all hot, like even just thinking about him.
Bob Gunton.
Not in a good way. In like
Bob
an angry
Gunton.
way.
This is the perfect thing because it reminds me of Joffrey from Game of Thrones.
Oh, I hate that guy.
But he's so fucking good at it. He's so good at being the worst person in the world that I'm like, damn, he did such a job. But it's that, you're right, it's that uppity religious sort of thing where he's always quoting Bible verses. And so the warden's whole thing is that he's got so many illicit schemes happening under the books. Thanks to Andy, which also then pays dividends to Andy at the end of the film. But he's a corrupt man. He's a genuinely corrupt man who is
cruel to his prisoners.
In the book is wanting to run for office as well. Oh, I think it's the warden just before him that wants to run for office as well. So there's this. They sort of mix elements of the 3 wardens in the film, but he's smug, he's arrogant, he abuses power. His abuse of power is solitary, just sends him to solitary confinement.
And it's just because you hate him so much in the film, Andy's escape is all the more sweeter.
That scene, it's almost whimsical when he finds the hole, and I love it.
It's like a high. You're just like, oh my God.
Let's discuss this as well while we're here. So the warden in the book, so when Andy escapes, he releases all the documents about the illicit schemes that the warden has going on, and the warden is arrested.
Well, they come to arrest him. He doesn't get arrested.
In the movie,
bites the bullet.
Oh, in the book, he's just arrested.
Oh,
in the film, in the film,
film,
in a much more satisfying way. Looks to his sign that says, what's it say?
Something religious about judgment will come,
cometh for dickheads, basically. And
I think that's the direct quote from the
Bible.
The
direct quote from the Bible. I'm well versed in the Holy Bible.
Psalm 2.
Psalm 2, verse 14, righteous judgment for the dickheads. But it's great because in the movie, there's like 20 police officers coming to arrest him, and he thinks his little 6-shooter, he's got like one last stand. And then as soon as he turns it on himself and shoots himself, this is the weirdest thing to say, but it's the most satisfying suicide I've ever seen.
But what I don't understand is like, that is like the biggest sin to commit suicide, right?
It is.
He's just a hypocrite through and through right till the end.
And he knew it.
And it's kind of like, that's actually, Have you seen Count of Monte Cristo before?
I actually haven't.
So the guy who jails him.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to spoil it for you, but there's parallels. So
Okay.
the guy who causes his distress, he puts him at the end when he's getting his vengeance in the back on the way to the same prison that he'd sent him to.
That's pretty.
And he puts a gun in there. So the guy picks
Gives
it up
him
to
the
shoot
option.
himself,
Yeah.
goes to shoot it, no bullets.
I love that.
See, I love Count of Monte Cristo. You've got to watch it. It's so fucking good.
That is such a big dick energy movie. That's so good.
Yeah. But it's like there's a lot of sort of similarities.
There's so many satisfying things in this movie and this book. Like, and it's the funniest thing because our characters are criminals. They are criminals, and they've all, aside from Andy, who Tommy reveals to him that he was actually bunked in another prison with the man who admitted to the murder, are all criminals, and we still root for them and we love them like as people and as characters. So, which brings me to the scene that I think is one of the most feel-good scenes in the movie is the roof, and in the book as well, the rooftop, when they're tarring the rooftop and the guards, the main guard who's played by Clancy Brown, who's fantastic in this movie. Oh my God, he's so good.
In the fact that I hate him so much.
I hated him so much, and then only Warden Norton comes across to be even more hated, which is saying a lot. But the scene on the rooftop, they're tarring the rooftop of the prison, and Andy overhears the guards talking about getting inheritance, I believe, but they're worried it's going to be taxed on it.
Take it all.
And Andy says in this classic like borderline Asperger's sort of way, to be totally honest, is like, do you trust your wife?
He's
like, what the fuck are you saying? He's
like to be fair to the guard, it's like
it's very abrupt, right? It's like, where did that come from?
And you obviously start thinking of it in like a sexual way. Like, is she having an affair on you? Like, it's not. You're not going to think to have my money,
especially coming from an alleged wife killer as well. Thinking about that, so a lot of context there. But he threatens to like throw him off the building, but he's like, no. Like, I'm a banker. I'm no finance. Like, if you gift this to your wife and you trust her, it's tax-free.
Yeah.
And that starts this whole thing where Andy's like, okay, well, I'll do the forms for you, but I want 3 cold beers for every man working on this roof. And the guard does it. And it's this really nice moment. And it is nice in the book, and I like the way it's played out. But again, Tim Robbins in the film, of him just sitting there with that smile, watching his fellow inmates just enjoy beers, and he doesn't drink himself anymore.
Yeah.
It's kind of really lovely. It's this real feel-good moment.
I think it is. I think for me, it probably didn't hit as hard because I would never have a cold beer on a rooftop after a hard day's work.
Maybe that's what I was really
I think it's much more probably a masculine thing. Like, it does sound like something you would enjoy.
You know, Georgia, in all my time tarring... Oh, hey, you know what? We can the equivalent.
If it was cold Pepsi Max,
Georgia's
I could get around it.
After a hard day of tarring, Jay, you can jump on the roof for a cold Pepsi Max. Just make sure you ask someone if they trust their wife.
Yes, of course.
That's what you can get. So maybe that was it. Maybe I was just in need of a cold beer, and I was like, this seems amazing.
No, but it was beautiful for them. A lovely moment of friendship and a small pleasure in a place where there's not a lot of pleasure to be found.
Absolutely.
So I did think it was nice.
Is there anything that sticks out as well that you loved about the film or the book before we unfortunately... Oh my God, I will say this. There's just a line. When they get the donation, so Andy builds a book in the library. I think we should just briefly mention, because we haven't really brought it up, the relationship with Andy and Red starts as Andy knows that Red is a guy who can get things.
Yeah.
And he asks
huge point of the movie.
Huge point of the film, because that's how they're introduced to each other. But then Andy gets a rocket.
Rock hammer.
A rocket.
That would be handy to escape if you got a rocket.
You know what? Shorter movie. That's for sure. Real short. Warden Norton's like, what the fuck's that rocket doing there? A rock hammer and
rock polisher.
Rock polisher. And he's creating all these little statues and chess pieces and stuff. But in the film, 19 years, he manages to jib a hole out of the wall.
Which is hiding behind the
I think it's about almost 30 years in the book,
he
says. So.
And it also, actually do like in the book, it gives us a little bit more details of the logistics of his escape in terms of like, he actually used the rock polishing cloth to wrap the hammer to like dig into the wall.
You do see that at one point,
Oh, do you? I must
it's in the montage bit. So like we only get really a montage of what Andy was doing over the course of time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a lot more detail. But I do like that in the book though. Red even himself says, I don't really know how he did it, but if I was to make an educated guess, it would be this. And I like that.
Red actually admits a lot of his information is hearsay from around the prison. It's actually not first-hand.
I love that about the book. It adds to me even more to Red, but it kind of creates Andy Dufresne as this fable.
Yeah,
right?
he's Andy just represents hope and freedom.
Yeah, literally. It's just a really happy book in that regard, I guess.
But I liked in the book, and also like talked about like things that I don't think the movie necessarily makes you overly think about. Like it really puts the stress on the rats, which rats are actually really like dangerous and really aggressive, and there would have been so many.
Especially
so he probably would have been like
bit.
literally mauled by rats. And then also the fact, this was the first thing I thought in the movie, when he gets to the end of the tunnel and he falls out, and I'm like, of the pipe into the river. Why wouldn't there be a grate on there? And Red mentions that was just pure luck.
It's literally pure luck. Imagine if he crawled through 500 yards of shit and piss.
You're just trapped behind a gate.
And imagine that. It was just blind luck that Andy, I think as well in the book, he kind of brings up like, he doesn't know why Andy chose to wait so long after doing it, but that he knew that those pipes, it was getting upgraded. So maybe this was the chance to be like, this is my only chance to get out. So maybe I don't know, but still, it's always a gamble, right? It was always, and the way it's filmed in the movie is so,
they do
that escape scene is so exhilarating. Because
he does his final night in the office too at the Wardens, and that's when he does the book swap and gets all the information to get the money. And
the shoe swap is even more satisfying as well. And just taking the suit, the Warden's suit, which is great. I love it. Good. So there's so much about this.
As we say now, Slay Queen.
Slay Andy, Slay Queen. More like Shaw Slay Redemption. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my God.
But but you know what, Georgia? It can't all be slays, because I unfortunately do have one criticism.
Oh, dude.
And it's about the book.
Okay, so it's not about the movie.
It's not about the movie. The movie's perfect. It's 5 stars. No, mate, literally, this is like grasping at straws criticism. I struggled with the structure of the book.
It's like a bit all over the shop. Now, you mean?
Yes, but it is somewhat justified at the end when Red does go, I've written all this down. Like, I love that reveal that he has been writing this down over all these years, over all these decades. And it was just more of a stream of consciousness. It was, like you said, hearsay. And I do like the part of the book where it goes, I had all this paper, and this is now actually a year later, and I found it all, and I'm writing it now as a free man outside of the Shawshank prison. But the book itself is structured in a way where nothing. It's
not very chronological, but it goes back and forth.
It goes back and forth. It's like segments. So like we get a bit about the sisters, and we get a bit about the library, and we get Tommy, and it's all structured somewhat chronologically based on how those things go.
But in parts.
And
so even though the part is correct chronologically, it might be in a different order to something that's happened before or after. Is that what you mean?
That's what I mean,
I know what you mean.
So I feel like reading it after having watched the movie several times, it was quite easy to follow, don't get me wrong. But when I was really just trying to take it in, I was like, okay, the structure here is a bit odd.
Yeah.
And it's not odd for the book, because obviously, like I said, when it's justified as how this is just Red's recollection of it all. I don't mind that, because it actually kind of makes sense. But as a narrative, it is interesting. Like if that wasn't there, if that justification of like this is just Red's notes wasn't there, I'd be like, this is a weird way to structure the book. Like I think it's harder, because when Andy does break out, it happens very matter of fact in the book. We get the final conversation, not the final conversation, but we get the conversation between Red and Andy about like, when you get out of here, go to Buxton, and there'll be this
polished black rock,
and there'll be something underneath it.
Yeah, like that's where he leaves a letter for him.
In the movie, Red takes that as he's kind of like Andy doesn't seem himself. Like it's actually one of the only times in the movie that Andy seems really angry, because this is stemmed off the fact that the warden's like, we're not pursuing this new evidence in your case, and Andy's really angry about it. And Red's worried about him, and then that's when it's revealed that Andy asked Hayward for 6 foot of rope. And then everyone's like, what the fuck? Why'd you do that? And he's like, I had no idea. Like, no one told me. And he seemed fine when he asked for it. So that's when Red had, like you were saying earlier, has his longest night ever. Yeah. But in the book, it just then kind of goes, and in 1975, Andy Dufresne escaped Shawshank prison. Yeah. And then, in fairness, that last 30 pages of the book are fantastic really still. Good. It's incredibly written. But yeah, I just don't think that structure lends to being as emotionally invested in the narrative as Darabont adaptation does.
Well, the other thing about the adaptation and Andy's escape, which is 5,000 times better than the book, is that in the book he sets up up bonds and stocks on the outside, which is where he makes his money. Whereas in the movie, he steals it all from the warden. So
satisfying. So I do like that so much better because in doing all this tax stuff for the warden and all the prisoners, all the guards in the prison, in the film he sets up basically a fake
identity
as someone who is also part of these schemes so he basically sells it to the warden as you need like a ghost account that if this shit happens they're going to be looking for no one and you'll be able to access the money and he goes like, let me create the accounts for it. Then in this whole time he's like, I need to get birth certificate, we need driver's license, we need this, and that's all happening. So then when Andy breaks out, he who does he become? I can't
remember the name. So it's like the most like general name.
Randall Stevens.
Yeah.
Randall Stevens.
I think it's different in the book.
It's different in the book. I think it's Peter Stevens in the book.
Yeah.
Randall Stevens, and then the most satisfying scene is him walking into the bank. He's like, hello, I'm Randall Stevens. I'd like to close my account. It's so much more satisfying that he stole $370,000 from the warden.
It's so good.
That's like $1 million. That's millions of dollars today. So...
And then we get to the end, and obviously Red sort of finds the rock, and he remembers where Andy said he would be in Mexico.
I love it.
And in the book, Red's just heading to him.
Yeah. Yeah, just
so
kind
it's a bit
of
more
on this
ambiguous.
gung-ho. Yes. So, and I love the last few lines about, like, I hope I see Andy Dufresne. I hope the Pacific Ocean is as large as he says it is. And the last 2 words is just, I hope. So very ambiguous.
Yeah. But obviously in our movie, he makes it, which is the sugar. The sugar you were promising. The sugar in the
that
tea.
Needed to account for the spice. But it's such a beautiful shot to end on because we don't hear anything they say. It's just Red walking on the beach towards the boat and Andy's there in his fucking sleeveless shirt, tanned up to the gills. Looking good. And he just turns around and smiles, and then the credits start rolling as like the camera pulls away and they hug on the beach, and that's it. That's the Shawshank Redemption. It's a beautiful ending.
It's a really nice ending. I'm glad that they found each other in the movie rather than it being ambiguous.
So Frank Darabont wanted the original ending in the book. Producers were like, no, we need something nicer, and they kind of pushed it a little bit further, and there was like a real like not hoity-toity, what's the word? It's like a real twee sort of ending where they actually said stuff to each other, and then they sort of met in the middle and be like, let's have them meet, but we don't hear anything they say. Like,
I think that was a perfect way to end it.
Perfect ending to that film. Oh, I love it.
And you mentioned before, just one last thing to close off on, you mentioned the whole idea, which is sort of talked about, of who is the main character.
Yes.
Is it Red or Andy?
Totally.
And so Red himself makes commentary on this.
Yes, in the book.
In a very beautiful quote, which obviously I don't know well enough by heart to say it, sadly. But it's he essentially says that it is his story, but Andy represents all the best parts of him.
Yes.
Essentially. And that's why he wants to tell
the story, right?
Yeah.
He goes, well, you weren't writing about yourself. I hear someone in the peanut gallery saying you were writing about Andy Dufresne. You're nothing but a minor character in your own story, but you know that's just not so. It's all about me, every damn word of it. Andy was the part of me they could never lock up, the part of me that will rejoice when the gates finally open for me.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Oh, I just got a few goosebumps.
It's beautiful.
A few little goosebumps.
Now imagine that in Morgan Freeman's voice. Imagine if that was said in
you do all right, mate.
I'm not going to try again. But that's it. Like, and that to me is, I think I sense that in the film as well. A lot of what we see in the film is very akin to Red's recollection, but we never see Andy making the tunnel until the end. We don't see Andy's plan with him creating the driver's license and creating Randall Stevens ultimately. It's all either the hearsay that Red gets or conversations Andy has with Red about this.
And it's like interesting because even though it is all about Andy, Andy feels like a mysterious figure the whole time, and Red so feels elusive. Real.
Exactly,
but
right?
it's like literally all about Andy. It's interesting.
But I love that as well because to me it kind of goes, that's almost genius in the writing.
Oh, 100%.
To be like I don't even know. I think there's an argument there. It's like Red is the main character of Shawshank. The Shawshank Redemption is about Red, but it's Red telling Andy's story, and that's kind of great. Like it's
really good.
I just love the friendship in this movie. How good's friendship? Ugh. Maybe I should go to prison and get some real friends. No, I'm kidding. I love all my friends.
I won't be coming to do the podcast in prison.
I'll see if the warden's real nice and be like, can we get a podcast studio set up in here? I'll do your taxes.
Welcome to the prison potty with Nick
to the prison potty. Life on the inside. Met these guys called the Sisters. Anyway, let's wrap up this show. Georgia, we've come to the part of the show that everyone loves, the hotly anticipated reveal of what was better, the book or the film, The Shawshank Redemption or Rita Hayworth, The Shawshank Redemption. Georgia, what is your decision?
I'm looking at you because I'm like, you knew that it was going to be the movie, and it is.
Is this show rigged? Maybe. No, look,
it's the movie, obviously.
It's the movie, but it's tough to compete when a movie is this good. Like it's 5-star.
Potentially the best movie ever.
There is an absolute argument to be made that this is one of the best movie ever made. Yeah. Is it my favorite as wow, great. Is it my
favorite movie?
Yeah, most favorite movie? Yeah. No, it's not, but it's in there. It's up there. It's absolutely.
I wouldn't say, but I think having a favorite movie and a movie being the best movie is kind of different.
Yeah, no, it's different parameters.
Favorite is more subjective.
Agreed.
Whereas being a best movie is just like, is it a strong, engaging story that's told well?
Great point.
And in terms of me trying to think of another film that does it as good as The Shawshank Redemption, I'm like Count of Monte Cristo.
hey, well now I've got to bloody watch the Count of Monte Cristo because I think that sounds
Rihanna would like that one.
Sounds like an all-time banger. No, I know. I think I know she loves that one. So it is the movie, but I will say this: if you do love the film, the book is a fantastic companion.
Yeah,
piece.
It's absolutely worth the read.
Absolutely worth the read. It's like 130 pages long, but if you watch the movie and you feel like you understand the movie enough, it adds enough context, but context that you kind of glad wasn't in the film. Like you didn't need for the movie itself. So they're both winners in my eyes. This is probably...
it wasn't a bad novella. Like it was a really good novella.
But like I guess maybe in comparison would be Fight Club, right? Where the book is so much more... I literally had a word in my head and I just went away. But it's just so much more...
Erratic.
It's so much more divisive and confronting. Like it's not necessarily digestible or easy to read. Whereas the movie is quite, accessible.
Yeah.
Whereas like this is an accessible novella, it's an accessible film, and they're both fantastic. Agreed. Just so happens that the movie's better.
It is.
So,
it's another one for you. That's like 3 movies in a row. Well, one tie for me.
Well, that was true. Yeah, we still can't pick.
Books aren't on a good run.
Well, our book's going to make a comeback, Georgia Malt. Why don't you let me know and let the audience know what we got going on next month?
Okay. Well, this is one we've actually talked about before.
Oh, okay.
So I'll just ask you a question. Have you ever felt like a wallflower? And do you know the perks of it?
I've never felt like a wallflower.
No, you don't seem like the wallflower
type. I'm not a wallflower
type.
type. However, Georgia, there is a movie I've seen before that may be able to help me understand, and I believe it's called The Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do it.
Okay.
Something a bit different, a bit of coming of age. Go back to the outsider roots a little bit.
And I also am aware that the book is written as diary entries as far as I'm aware, so it's going to be something a little bit different.
Have you ever read a book like that?
I barely read a book. No. I no, you know what? The only one that I can say that is kind of like that is Gone Girl.
Oh, yeah.
Because that is also like that, which will probably pop up on the show one day. Okay, Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Bit nostalgic for me.
Bit nostalgic? Well, is that a book that, I know we'll break it down more next month, but is that a pretty...
It was significant for me book? In my journey to becoming the reader I am today.
That's exciting. Because I think the movie's pretty damn good, so I think it would be
interesting
a good conversation to have.
Yeah.
And then obviously we will reveal November's episode in November, but we've already got an idea, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a very... immersive interactive episode.
Oh my God, are we actually going to do it?
Absolutely, we're going to do it.
Everyone get excited.
Keep your eyes out for that. But thank you for watching on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for listening to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts. iHeartRadio. You're still there. We love you. If you do subscribe or follow us, we would very much appreciate it. And if you want to follow us somewhere else other than Podcast Land, where can they find us? Georgia, where are you?
So you can find me on Instagram as withg.co.
Sorry, I just took some water. And you can... Sorry, I thought it was going to be a little longer. I was like, whoa. Yeah. And you can find me at nicksflicksfix on Instagram and X. I can't call it Twitter anymore.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I'm on X. Not that one, the social media
Yeah, that
one.
doesn't sound right.
It doesn't sound as nice. And all the links to all the shows on there. Now, quickly before we go, I think you're aware of this. You'll be able to find us on another podcast of ours in a couple of weeks, the monthly movie marathon.
Are we doing another one? No, I didn't know.
I probably should have told you. We're doing it very soon.
Yay.
Monthly movie
Guys,
marathon.
These are a bit of fun.
With myself and Peter Gray is another podcast on this channel. And for the last 2 years, Georgia and Rhiannon have been guests for the After series.
And for those who don't know, Rhiannon is my best friend of forever and Nick's
girlfriend of 8 years. I think she is. So yeah, this is a Sunday night. We're getting to the end of the weekend. The brain is fading. So
yeah, we jump on the mic. We come give the boys a little visit.
Let's just say the 2 episodes we've done for the After series are the most listened to episodes of the show. And for good reason, because they are a jolly good time.
They're fun.
So the new After movie, After Everything's coming out. So we're going back to watch After Ever Happy, which released last year. So I highly recommend. It's a bit more PG, although we were talking about everything that happens in prisons this episode.
I don't know if it. I think it's more risque.
Oh, that's what I mean. Like if you like the sweet innocence of this show, there might be a little bit of a hurdle to get over, a raunchier side. But Red, White, and Royal Blue gave you just a taste of what that is. But that is on the Nick Flicks Fix podcast channel, so be on the lookout for that as well. And because if you're here and because you're a fan of Georgia, you'll be able to hear more Georgia on that episode. But until next month, thank you all for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks, guys. Bye.